When I say the four callings of Peter, there's 4 times where Jesus deals with Peter exclusively about his relationship with him and being with him, calling him, that kind of thing. I had all 4 prepared last week, but we got through the 3rd one, and it's always a judgment call. There was no way I could get into the 4th one, so I'm going to do the 4th one today. The first 3 are all situations that you know, and so is the 4th one. Quick review of the first 3. We were in the first chapter of John when Andrew brings his brother, and Jesus looks at him and says, Simon, son of John. He identifies him as his earthly lineage. He says that, but he says, you shall be called Cephas. So he basically gives Peter a new name, or actually identifies him as, listen, because Cephas means like a little rock. It means Peter. Jesus is the rock. And he's looking at him and he's saying, yes, you were born and you've been raised by John. That's great. But you shall be called a little rock. You shall be called part of me. You shall be called a son of God. The challenge with that I said last week is on a daily basis is identifying who's actually like in control and running the show here. Son of my dad who raised me a particular way, which is not a bad way, or the son of God. Obviously, there's a mingling going on, but the point being, on a daily basis, I said we have to keep in mind whose son we really are. And at any given moment, we can act like the son of our natural lineage with all of its whatever, or the son of God. Peter doesn't say a word. He just meets Jesus, and that's Jesus' opening line to him. I know you. You're the son of John, but this is what you're going to be. So we started from a position of identity. Every day, we have to make, as far as I'm concerned, a conscious effort to remind ourselves who we are in God every day. And then we went to Matthew 4, where Jesus calls Peter and Andrew, the 2 of them together, his brother, and he says, follow me, and they do. And that second point, was what Jesus promised him. He said, I will make you fishers of men. Everything your heart's desire is, I will make you into the son that you can be. I will make you all that this world needs. I will make you. If we could somehow get that in our heads, that God's not looking us to self-create ourselves. He's not looking to us and say, for crying out loud, what are you doing? It's not like that at all. Basically what he's saying, would you just relax and let me, like a good dad, make you into something? Because I'm promising you, I will make you. A father may never say that, or a mother directly to their children, but that's really what they're doing every day of their lives. They're forming and shaping them, teaching them, feeding them. They're actually making a person, and all the person gets to do is grow up in that, if you know what I'm saying. The parents accept the responsibility. They don't, have a baby and then say, well, 5 years, by the way, don't forget you have to go to kindergarten. It's a bit silly. We recognize that in a natural way. The first instance, Peter's actually being called a son, a little rock. In the second calling, so to speak, the father is saying to him, I will make you. I'm a good dad. I know what I'm doing. You got to give me something to work with here, though. You have to follow me. And then the third one is in Luke 5. Great story about when they've been fishing all night, and Jesus preaches from the boat and then says, go out, launch into the deep. And they get this great catch. And immediately Peter's response is to fall at Jesus' feet and say, get away from me. I'm a sinner. Which is pretty much, it's really kind of funny, isn't it? We screw up, and the thing we kind of gravitate towards is, oh, get away from me. I'm awful. And Jesus is throwing his arms and says, what, are you kidding me? Now you need me more than ever before. He doesn't say to him, don't tell me to get away from you. He just basically says, I won't. Sorry, can't grant that prayer request. I'm with you. And like I told you before, I will make you into fishers of men. And we have that beautiful scene. The only reason why we know that Peter was in fear of God, of Jesus wouldn't have said to him, don't be afraid. He looks down and he sees Peter in this position on his knees. And like I said last week, we kind of live in this fear of failure, fear of success, fear of this, fear of that. But we all live in this kind of tension and this fear because we don't know what's going to happen and all that. And Jesus is just saying, don't be afraid. Come to me. So that's kind of where we've been. And I think in order to really get hold of that, I don't think you can do that as a command. Jesus gave the command, fear not, so don't fear. I don't think it works quite that way. I think when he says, launch out into the deep, he's saying if you really want to know that place of total peace and no fear, then you got to go deeper. You can't just fish where you've been fishing. You can't just go along the top of the water. I've been in John 21 before, so it's a familiar passage. Mm-hmm. It's the last time we get this kind of calling of and to Peter. So It's the third appearance. John tells us it's the third appearance that Jesus made to them. Peter seems to be the main character. Danielle, would you read verse 3?
Simon Peter said, "I'm going fishing." "We'll come too," they all said. So they went out in the boat. They'd caught nothing all night.
Right, so there's a kind of a setup that it's going to be sort of like Luke 5. They've been out fishing all night long. They've caught nothing. John is wording it in a way where you can't help but look at the two of them. Luke 5, which was the last time that Jesus called Peter, and now we're in John 21. The thing is, it's very clear. Would you read what Peter says?
"I'm going fishing."
I'm going fishing. He's with 6 of his buddies, 6 other disciples, and it's interesting how he says, I'm going fishing, instead of let's go fishing. How does that strike you? I mean, you picture these guys. Peter says, I'm going fishing, and they all say, okay, well, we're going to go with you. Any thoughts about Peter or the situation? Anything at all? And keep in mind, this is 3.5 years down the road. They've just had 2 appearances of Jesus following Easter. They have gone through an incredible 3.5 years with the Son of God, who's just been resurrected. There's no right or wrong to this. I like to try to, if we can, get back into like a situation sometimes, how that strikes us. Some of the commentators say he's going back to fishing instead of going forward like he was being called to. But he says that, they say, we're going with you. It just would have been so much nicer in a certain respect, knowing Peter's the ringleader. He's been appointed their leader. There's so many different ways of looking, at the situation. You may or may not have made this connection before. We're starting a story at one end, Peter saying, I'm going fishing. Verse 18 is the other end of the conversation that they're going to have. Would you read verse 18?
"I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go."
So it sounds like Peter might be going through something. And Jesus is not putting him down. He's saying, listen, I understand. There's been a time in your life where you do whatever you want. But I'm telling you, there's a transformation coming. Something's going to take place in your life where you're going to submit to things. You're going to submit to God. You're going to submit to people. You're going to submit to love. You're going to submit to a different way of living and thinking, which is going to require you not going where you want to go, when and how you want to go. But you're going to be submitting to something else. And John goes on to say he was talking about his death. But he was also posing this situation with him. Peter, I know you're the one that said, I'm going fishing, And that's okay. I'm not putting you down. But we're going to have to transition. Because if you're going to follow me, we're going to have to transition to a different way of seeing things and people and situations that are not going to allow you to say, I'm doing this or I'm going to do that. So there's kind of like this built-in thing. Now this is leading us into, so to speak. Like I said, Peter just seems to be the main character in John 21. Russ, you want to read verse 7?
That disciple, therefore, whom Jesus loved, said to Peter, It is the Lord. And so when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put his outer garment on, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea.
We know this story, but that's why I'm not reading every verse. Jesus is on the shore to them. He asks them if they've caught anything. They say no. He tells them where to throw the net. They throw it in. They get this huge catch. And John recognizes that it's the Lord. He says to Peter, it's the Lord. Peter puts on his outer garment, jumps in the water, and starts swimming to shore. Now, let's just throw a little something else into the mix. An outer garment was a Jew's most valued possession.
He wasn't going to leave his garment.
You gotta love Peter. Excuse me, guys. I'll just take this with me if you don't mind. You gotta love him. I mean, I do, because I identify with him so much. He's all over the map, And it's a bit like that. I love you guys. Love one another as I've loved you. Give me my coat, please. It's got a bit of that to it. And he jumps in, of all things. Imagine how hard it is to swim anyway, and you throw your outer garment on to go swimming. You just made it a lot harder on yourself. Spiritual significance. Genesis 3, God comes along and says, Adam, where are you? Made their own garments, hiding behind them, and he makes the comment, I was afraid. And again, it's a funny thing. Jesus never takes issue with him about his garment. It's just like, okay, it's Peter for Christ. You can see the angels saying, why do you put up with? Because he's Peter for Christ. He's my boy. He's working through some things. Give him a break, would you? It's only been 3.5 years. It's like 3.5 years you created the earth, and really. So we got Peter once again, this time diving into the sea and swimming to Jesus, which is really kind of funny. Jesus had told them where to cast their nets, and the word that John uses is Peter cast himself into the sea. So there are all kinds of things in John. It's one of the reasons I love the book. There's all kinds of things going on. Cast your nets on the right side, the whole thing. He does, and then Peter casts himself into the sea, which we had said last week. The call was them to leave their nets to become bait. So the beautiful thing I think about Peter here, Adam made his way away from God. Peter's making his way. At least Peter's got this thing going that says, he says, depart from me, I'm a sinner. And Jesus said, no way, you're my boy. And Peter's kind of got that because he just jumps in and starts swimming to Jesus, if you would. This whole scene to me, this one particular segment is son of John and Little Rock, both of them, kind of in Peter. He's working through being a son of John and being a Little Rock, being a Peter. And you could see his spiritual instincts and you can see his natural instincts, like running like this. And it's a beautiful thing, actually. God doesn't hate humans. He made us. He loves us. He says we're good. If you go back and read the beginning of the book, in fact, he says, they're very good. I'm nuts about human beings. And he knew he was making a being that was natural and spiritual. So let's not get on the case like we're just a bunch of rotten sinners. Wrong. That is not what we are. We have had some problems with sinning for sure. But that is not what we are. That's not what God said. You quoted Psalm 139, fearfully and wonderfully made. That doesn't sound like a pile of garbage to me. That sounds like something made in his image and likeness. That doesn't sound like a pile of garbage to me. That sounds like a human being who, just like our children, haven't really learned how to obey, haven't really learned certain aspects of the parental-child relationship, and they act like children. Let's read one more verse, and then we'll get to the meat of this thing. In verse 11, if somebody wants to read verse 11.
Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land, full of large fish, 153, and although there were so many, and the net was not torn.
He makes it to shore, and the guys are trying to get the boat and the fish to shore. And it would have been kind of difficult. The water would have been shallow. So it would have been quite a task. But all of a sudden, as they get close enough to the shore where Peter can go out into the water, Jesus basically says to them, bring some of the fish to me. He's already cooking fish. But he says, bring some of your fish to me. And Peter goes out there, gets a hold of this net that has 153 fish in it. The 6 of them were dragging it to shore. Peter goes out by himself, grabs the net, and drags it in. And John even records, although there were so many fish, the net didn't break. There was 153 of them in there. Now, if you counted the miracles in the 4 Gospels, you'll end up with 153. So writers believe that what John was saying, and this is important for the first question that he's going to ask Peter, he's dragging this net in with all the works they've done in 3.5 years. And there does seem to be a bit of a miraculous feeling about this. One man dragging in what 6 were struggling with, and a net that was not designed for 153 fish is not breaking. Something's going on, and Peter drags this net in by himself. If you know Peter, he can do anything.